I've got a question for you. Why does it take ages for my eyes to adjust? So if I'm going from outside to inside, other people seem to be able to like walk into a building and be able to see straight away. Whereas for me, it takes a good like 30 seconds or minute before I can actually see. It's just black. But also it's the same for going outside. So when I'm inside and then I go outside and it's bright, it takes me a good like 30 seconds, a minute to be able to see, whereas other people can just walk out of a building and carry on with life. Why is that?
So that's because your eyes have to do very, very clever things to deal with bright light, then going to really dim light, and yet still having good vision. So the way your eye, or anyone's eye, tries to deal with that is two things. One, and the most important by a long way, is that the pupil will change size. So if I go out into bright conditions right now, my pupil will very quickly go super small. That limits the amount of light going into my eye, and so my retina is not just bleached by super bright light, not overexposed. But that relies on me having an iris, which is a good blackout blind. It's got a really thick layer of pigment on the back, which operates it as a fantastic blackout blind. People with albinism, it's less like a blackout blind, more like a net curtain. So it will block the light a little, and it's really variable. But it absolutely won't be as good a blackout blind. So the amount of light getting to the back of your eye when you suddenly go outside is way more, and the pupil isn't able to control for that. The second way your eye tries to adjust is by the retina itself. So the film of the camera at the back of the eye, if you like, changes a little bit as well. But that's much slower and not actually very good, to be honest. So most people who don't have a good iris blackout blind, and that includes people with albinism, but also people with other eye conditions, will really struggle with that. And it works both ways, obviously. If you've adjusted to super bright and then you go into a dark room, your pupil can't help you manage that because your retina's trying to take all the load, and it's frankly not very good at it.
If you have albinism and you don't have any pigment in your iris, is your iris thinner than somebody who does have it?
That's a good question. It probably is, but it's not so much about the thickness and the size, it's more about the kind of density of the pigment on the back. So the iris broadly has two layers for simplicity. The front of it is the muscle, so that's the bit that makes it get bigger and smaller, and that's the coloured bit. And there's endless discussions about colour of muscle on the eye, right? The back bit is actually a really dark black, relatively thin layer actually, but it's the darkness of that layer which is key to how good a blackout blind it is. So it's not so much the bulkiness, it's more about the pigment on the back.
So you still have that layer, it's just it might not be as dark as someone else's.
Absolutely. It may well be a bit thinner. I don't actually know the answer to that. But more importantly, it's about how black is it? How good is it at actually blocking light?
And I guess off the back of that question, here's another part to it. We always talk about albinism being a spectrum, and some people don't really seem to struggle that much with bright light and photophobia. And some people really, really do. I really, really do. And if there's one thing I could get rid of with albinism, that would 100% be what it would be for me. What determines why some people find light hard and some people don't?
Yeah, that's a good question again. So the main thing by a very long way is that blackout blind again. So some people, when I look at their eyes, so I use a little machine, look in with lights, I can shine light in through the pupil, and what comes back at me through the iris is basically just bright pink, bright red, and the iris is doing almost nothing to block light at all. So if it's not blocking light coming out, it's definitely not blocking light going in. Whereas some people with albinism, I really have to work really hard to even see that it's not blocking out light in a way that I'd expect in someone without albinism. So there's a huge spectrum in how good the iris is as a blackout blind. That is the major component of why people with albinism have very variable photophobia or problem with bright lights. I suppose another small thing might be the actual pigment at the back of the eye as well. So some people have really, really fair kind of surrounding inside if you think of the inside of the eye like a squash court, some people it is bright white almost. And some people can have albinism, but actually it's quite a bit darker, and again that would help a little bit with light bouncing around all over the place. But it's mainly the iris, to be honest.
And is it determined by type of albinism, or is it just random as to what you've been dealt?
So it is to some degree dependent on type, because when we talk about type, we've got to ask about what do we mean by type. So different genes and different spelling mistakes in those genes will cause a bit of pigment or no pigment at all. On the whole, the people with the least pigment are going to be the ones with the least pigment in their iris, and therefore the ones with the biggest problem with bright lights. On the whole, as a general rule. So it is related to type, but not. You can't just say people with OCA2 are not as bad as people with OCA1 or whatever. It's not quite that simple.
Okay, cool.
Good questions. So you came up with more follow-up questions this time.
I know, I did the follow-ups, didn't I?
Good work.
If you've got anything else you want us to discuss or any burning questions you want us to answer, then please put it in the comments below.
And if you could press some of those buttons at the bottom, the heart ones, the thumb ones, whatever they are, apparently that's good to get people to see these videos. So please do that.